Influencers, inspiration, and Instagram, Instagram, Instagram. This is Earned by Tribe Dynamics. Here's Connor Begley.
Welcome to Earned, everybody. Today we are going to learn from one of the most impressive mass beauty CMOs in the world, Soyoung Kang. Thanks for joining the show, Soyoung.
Thank you for having me, Connor.
Your background both mirrors our last guest and is equally as impressive. For those that don't know you, I'm going to brag about you for a second here, right? So you educationally did your undergrad at MIT, MBA at Wharton, which was the same as our last guest, Adeline, as well as you were a Fulbright scholar. You then did 3 years at Victoria's Secret and L Brands, 10 years at Bath & Body Works as the SVP of brand, 3 years now at EOS as a CMO, where you've grown that social audience to over 10 million fans, 750,000 of which are on TikTok. And then you've got a crazy number of awards: Forbes, CMO Next, Business Insider as the CMO to watch, Glossy as a beauty innovator, on and on and on. So congrats on all the hard work and all the accomplishments. They're super impressive.
Thank you so much. I mean, I think it's, first of all, it's really great to hear when it's all kind of summarized like that. I think it feels very just like the day-to-day work of the work as you're going along. I think it's really incredible that you've got now at this point like two people on within that MIT Wharton Venn diagram, because there's probably very, very few of us out there in the world, but that's pretty amazing.
Specifically within the beauty industry, right? I don't think that's the general path. But yeah, so, we are experimenting. So we're using a new application for this podcast recording. And I think that was a theme that I saw during your interviews and the way that you talked about things. So tell me, what has been your latest big experiment? And this can be a personal experiment or a work experiment. And then what did you learn from it? What's the latest?
So I feel like experimentation has always been something that I love that about the industry that we're in and about my particular functional role within this industry, because I think that within beauty, you have some of the most entrepreneurial and risk-taking folks out there. And then on top of that, when you work on the marketing side, you're always sort of tinkering with new and emerging things. So for us, I would probably say, I've talked a lot about TikTok, and I'm sure we're gonna, have that as part of our conversation. But I would say one sort of newer thing that we have been really embracing is having a more hilarious and authentic dialogue on TikTok with our audience there. And I think that that's been really eye-opening for us in terms of how much people are really embracing the real, raw, and unfiltered voice that we've been putting out there to talk about things that maybe brands haven't historically talked about, that have been a little bit more taboo or just sort of off limits. And I think that that's yielding incredible returns. And we're excited to do more of it going forward. We have some really fun things that we're working on right now.
So 2 questions that come out of that. One is, I would love to hear about what was the one that was almost too authentic, right? Was there anything that's been too authentic? When keeping it real goes wrong, right? So I'd love to hear about anything that's been where have you kind of pushed the boundaries there?
Yeah.
For those that aren't following you online. And then second, you talked about, results, right? This has been, returned great results. What are results for you, right, in doing those? I'd love to hear explore those 2 things.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the example that we have been the most proud of and that continues to sort of yield results and for us, for our business, has been, when we had this viral video that appeared on TikTok that was a young creator who was basically raving about our shave cream product. Now, our shave cream has existed in our portfolio for actually since the beginning. It was launched at the beginning of the life of EOS. But it hadn't really gotten a ton of love either, from us. We've always had sort of a cult following, but we haven't really done a whole lot to invest in and grow that business.
Yeah.
But people have found it. People have loved it. And this one particular creator was raving because somebody had asked her, how do you deal with the razor bumps in your bikini area? And so she posted this very long, hilarious, super authentic, and definitely not overly authentic, I swear, video where she starts, and the way she intros it, she says that, our product is the secret for how to bless your effing cooch. And she doesn't say effing, she says like all the real words. And so she goes on this like long, like this long tutorial about like how she shaves her private parts. And it's like the kind of thing that you would, if you think back years ago, not only would brands not have talked about that or embraced it or amplified it, but
Yep.
frankly, people really just did it in like out in public to like millions of people. But her video went absolutely viral. Millions and millions of people watched it and liked it. We knew that we wanted to be a part of the conversation and just like really embracing the authenticity, the realness, and the unfiltered view on something that like actually a lot of people wonder about. A lot of people really do wonder how to shave your cooch properly, and like we wanted to be part of like this conversation to help people to like learn. And she has like a whole thing where she's like, you shave down, like sideways on one side, sideways on the other side, and then up. And she's like, it's like a whole long thing. And it's like really descriptive. And so we took literally all her words and we repackaged our product.
Oh,
And
wow.
we basically created a whole like limited edition line of product called Cooch Blessing Cream. And we took verbatim every single word. She says, like I said, like shave down, shave sideways, go up. If you're in the shower, great. If you're not, F it, like who cares? It works anyway. So we all of it printed on the packaging verbatim. And we kind of like sent it to her as a gift, but also as like a, hey, creator, we'd love to partner with you.
Yeah.
And so, that got her attention. It got TikTok's attention, that's for sure, because we got millions more views on that video as well. And it was the beginning of a partnership. So then we started a collaboration with her. It was so successful, we expanded it out to other creators as well, who all put their own unique spin and spoke to their own audiences in similarly hilarious ways about how to achieve that smooth ass hoo-ha. And so it was like a tremendous success for us.
Yeah.
Our business, our business has doubled. It's an immediate overnight impact to our business. You can really see it in the way that our searches were up, search ranking was up, the traffic to our site increased by 450 times. Looking
Whoa.
for shave cream, what it was. We essentially sold out across all of our retailers. We've been absolutely in chase mode in terms of like trying to get the supply back in. But even despite all of, despite chasing the inventory, we were for several weeks the number one shave brand at Target across men's and women's. I mean, this is how
Whoa.
powerful. This is how powerful the platform is. How powerful social media is. How powerful a really great, smart, and fast partnership with a creator can be in terms of impacting your business. So I would say all of this is, I know this is a long story, but it's all basically saying like, we leaned into it. And I will tell you, like there were like a couple of conversations, are we ready for this? And we were like, hell yeah, we're ready for it, because
Yeah.
this is a conversation that we can't not be a part of. You know what I mean? So like we
Yeah.
moved
I mean,
really fast, and it worked, and it continues to work for us.
that one story, right, makes the whole podcast worth it, right? And I think that because it's again like one, super scary to do, right? Like this is a brand that's been around for a long time. That's risky. Two, like that idea of co-creation and of really using them as the experts, right, is just so fascinating. And then also that this all happened, right? It started organic, but then you embrace it, right? So it wasn't something that you didn't seed this, you didn't plan this. It happened, but you saw it, you engaged, you adapted, whatever. And the results then, like you said, oh my God, I love that. I had no idea that's what was going to come out of that question. And I'm so happy I asked it. Whoa, that's super cool. Congrats on that.
Thank you. I mean, I agree with you. Like the thing that has been really interesting is in the aftermath of all of this, because we've certainly gotten some really great kudos and attention from the industry about this campaign. And in the aftermath, like people have asked me, they're like, what, like, why did you decide to partner with this creator? And I was like, what, why wouldn't we partner with this creator? I mean, it was
Yeah.
already impacting our business and making us a part of a relevant and real conversation, like from day one. Why would we not want to keep that going? Why would we not want to like amplify that and keep the momentum and like kind of like milk it for as long as we possibly could? But the other piece of it was just like, I've also gotten asked, were you afraid? And I would say that honestly, for it was probably like a half a second, like
Yeah.
in this grand scheme of things, it was like a half a second where we looked at each other and we're like, are we ready for this? And we're like, yeah, we're totally. And then we were all in. There was like literally nothing about this idea that scared us. It was just all excitement, so much so
Yeah.
that we got the idea. We were partnering with our creative agency, Mischief, and we got the idea at I think it was 11 a.m. or 10 a.m. one day, like on a particular day, and I think we were in production that night. And then we
Whoa.
actually had the product produced like super fast, like just kind of pulling every favor we could. And within 3 days, the product was in the creator's hands. So
That's
it was very, very fast. And as you know, probably better than anyone, if you don't move fast, these things do fizzle out. So you really have to
yeah.
kind of strike while the iron is hot.
Yeah, no, momentum is super critical. That is such a cool story. I love that. Okay, all right, we're going to take a step back. So let's talk about your background a little bit, right? So for this podcast, the way that I think about it, part of it is diving into these kinds of stories, but then part of it's like, okay, for somebody that wants to be you, right? How do they get there, right? What does that path look like? And so, taking a step back to when you were first in undergrad at MIT, obviously went kind of the business side of things. Was marketing always on your mind, or was this something that kind of grew on you? Tell me about that path a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm a huge fan of people who you know, just explore and therefore have more evolutionary careers versus a straight path from A to B. I think,
Yep.
and that's my background. I mean, I actually, when I was at MIT, I studied architecture as an undergrad,
Yep.
and I actually thought I would be an architect for quite a period of time. And then coming out of undergrad, I ended up taking a job in financial institutions strategy consulting. So it was like nothing to do with my undergrad and nothing to do with what I do today. But every step that I've taken in my career, I've used it to sort of assess like, how do I calibrate, get closer to things that make me excited and that I'm passionate about. And so from there, each subsequent step that I took, I would say got me a little, closer. I took some left turns and some right turns, and that's okay, because at the end of the day, you are not only a product of a meticulously planned career journey in a
Even
lot
if
of
it looks like
ways.
that on LinkedIn, right? Because you can look at LinkedIn, it's like, oh,
Yeah,
well, obviously you went from here to here to here to here. Like this was all part of the plan from the beginning,
it,
so to
but
speak.
I mean, I spent the first 10 years of my career really as a strategist and as more of a consultant, and probably thinking more holistically about the business versus as somebody who's like, you know, a marketer or a brand builder, or frankly, even a beauty person. And I think that, but I do think that like a lot of my early skills and my early training really make me the type of marketer that I am today. I do tend to kind of embrace um, like measured risk taking. I do tend to embrace looking at holistically at the sum of the entire business scenario, not only just my functional area, but like, really thinking more broadly as a leader of the business. I like to think about strategic frameworks when I'm thinking about problems that I'm trying to solve. So all of that comes from the early phase of my career when I was doing things like consulting to insurance companies.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have expected that work would have led to where I am today. But I guess my advice to the folks out there who are wondering how they're going to end up in the position of their dreams in the future is that everything that you do in your career can be something you build off of and that you use to springboard into the next phase. And then that becomes something you use to springboard into the next phase. And it's okay if it doesn't always make sense from step to step, because it's the sum of the entire picture that makes you the leader that you ultimately become. It's not just being the perfectly planned straight line from A to B. It's really a series of calibrations throughout your career, and that's okay too.
Yeah, I think focusing on things that, one, like you said, get you excited, right? Areas where you feel like you're learning, right? So you're constantly learning, growing, etc. And then three, like you said, I think seeing it as like a building block towards your
Yeah.
future career is the goal, right? Like that's the path. I know that for me, I made a really big pivot in the way that we, even while I've been at Tribe, in terms, like I remember at one point I was like, oh, like I'm really bad at these things. Like I need to get better at them, right? So let's focus on them. Let's get better. And it's like, why am I doing this? Like I don't enjoy it. This isn't like I'm not good at it. Like I think specialization is so powerful, right? And especially when it's something that you're good at, and people tend to like the things they're good at, right? So those two things tend to be highly aligned.
I totally agree with that, Connor. Somebody once said to me that like you'll always be successful if you do more of the things that make you happy, and
Mhm.
I actually am a huge proponent of that. That like it doesn't mean that you can't learn new things and grow, and it certainly doesn't mean that you can't like try to like become better at a lot of things that maybe you're not as good at. But like if at the core of what you're doing, you're leaning into the things that you're personally passionate about, you're always going to be successful. It's going to lead you naturally down a path where you're going to have career career success because you're doing the things that you love.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so there's a big kind of middle part of your career that I think is quite interesting, right? So this is the time at L Brands, which I think spans, I mean, it's over a decade, right? And I think that I've always liked the people overestimate what you can do in a year and underestimate what you can do in a decade. Right? I'm a big fan of that phrase. So tell me about that period in your career, because I have to imagine that played a pretty big role as well.
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely did. And it's also a really interesting time in the like in the journey at at Bath and Body Works as well, because in the time that I was there, the area that I really ultimately came to lead in the personal care side of things grew tremendously over the course of my 10 years. And I really think of the Bath and Body Works portion of that career path as being the most formative, because I spent such a long period of time, that 10 years was where I really went from, I would say, being having a more mid-level perspective to really becoming a more seasoned leader. And what better place to do it than at a brand that's truly best in class in retail and is a formidable brand within the world of beauty and personal care than Bath and Body Works. But there's so many things that I've learned today where the business model that I'm in today is not what that business model is. I mean, the category shares certain things like there's a lot personal care, product, etc. But like we're
Yep.
talking mall-based specialty retail for 10 years of my life, vertically integrated, private label, created and sold.
Yep.
Versus now I'm in like a wholesale CPG brand that predominantly sells to food, drug, and mass retailers. So it's like
Yep.
the model itself is very different. So there's been a ton of like learning that I've done here, but like a lot of the principles that I've taken from my days at Bath and Body Works are still incredibly valid. The ideas around like testing, tinkering, always,
Yep.
experimentation, having a learning agenda, the idea of thinking about your consumer and how if you start from the insights of what is your consumer need that maybe they don't even know they need yet.
Mm.
All of these things are things that I apply now to my day to day, even though my day to day looks very different than it did while I was at Bath and Body. I'm always like tremendously grateful for the training
Yep.
that I had during those 10 years and the fact that, essentially I grew up in that organization.
Yeah. I mean, it's we're almost 9 years into Tribe, and it's funny because it sounds like a long period of time, but it also goes by really quickly. Like I can't believe I've been doing this for 9 years. Um, Yeah. So kind of on that, so obviously you have differences in distribution, right? But one of the things that I do think is similar between your current brand and Bath and Body Works is price point, right? So they're both kind of on a relative basis, be considered mass brands, right? So lower price point brands. And what I think is really fascinating about my perception of both brands is that they're both just like cool brands, right? There's not that many like cool, fun, mass brands. And I have to imagine that, you played a pretty big role in both of those, considering, CMO at your current brand. And I'm saying EOS, right? I got that right. EOS, right?
Yeah.
That's how you guys say it. Okay. I'm always scared. I'm like, is it EOS? Is it EOS? So I probably should have done that in the prep. But so tell me about that. Both like one, was that, obviously I would imagine that was somewhat of a goal, right, within Bath and Body Works, and you're there long enough as the SVP of brand to like really have an impact on that. And then when you first started working at EOS, was it like that at the beginning, or has that been kind of a transformation over the last few years? Like, how has that changed from when you started to where you are today in terms of their approach to branding and marketing?
Well, so I think it's a really like insightful observation to see the similarities and the parallels between both of those brands. And what I would say is that number one, if I go back to like the first part of your question around like, mass brands, I actually love working at accessible, value-driven brands. I actually think that it is something that I'm actually pretty passionate about
Yeah,
because I love this idea of being able to deliver quality at a value to consumers and doing what I like to call like democratization of categories that maybe historically have not been very democratized, where you had to compromise and maybe accept lower quality or less special or less inspiring um, products in exchange for a lower price point. I love that both
yeah,
Bath and Body Works as well as EOS today offer like the best in class from experience, quality, all of the above, but at a really, really affordable price point that anyone can engage. So it's a huge part of what actually attracted me to EOS, that I
yeah,
love working on mass brands. And I think that in the world of like that sort of affordable mass price point, I think there's so much room to really disrupt the traditional players that have been out there. So because for many, many years, for too long, consumers did accept a compromise. So, maybe either lower quality or just like less fun, less fashion oriented or driven.
yeah,
And I think today's world looks vastly different. So when you look across all of these different categories, they're all being disrupted by the upstart brands that are coming in with a more elevated point of view. They're creating moments of like desire and inspiration and fashion in categories that never had that. Band-aids, toothpaste, vitamins. Like these are all
yeah,
categories that you never would have been like, where you never would have thought like this is a desire category versus a replenishment functional category. And yet that's the world that we're living in. And so while I've always admired EOS as a brand because they were doing this, like they're like the OG disruptor, right? So like they were doing this 10 years ago when nobody was doing this in these aisles. So I've always admired that. And then today, I think that the degree of storytelling and fun and engagement that you do with your consumer, like that bar has just gotten so much more elevated because there are many other brands who are doing that today across many other categories.
yep,
And so for me, that's like sort of like next level challenge, right? Like how do I take this brand that was like, like I said, the OG disruptor, the OG like influencer brand, or like a
yeah, yeah, yeah.
for a lip balm, right? From like 10 years ago. And how do I take this brand to next level? And that was like the fun challenge for me. I've always, I love the history. I love like the strategy and that sort of like positioning of the brand. How do I do that and like up my game? And that's what really appealed to me about this opportunity.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. I agree that this opportunity to deliver significant value beyond just price is it's a fascinating challenge, and it's something that you're seeing happen quite a lot across kind of these traditionally replenishment driven categories, right? Like all of these direct to consumer brands that are popping up that are taking a category that's been either, relatively boring or stodgy or hasn't had a lot of innovation. Yeah, it's just really interesting. Um, okay, so you've mentioned leadership several times. I've heard you use that word a few times. I'd love to hear about what your kind of leadership philosophies are, number one. And number two, when you've left EOS and you're on to your next thing, what would you hope people would say about their time kind of working with you as a leader specifically?
I mean, I think that I'll start with the second kind of question first because I would always hope that wherever I've left, I would hope to be able to leave a legacy. And for me, while I appreciate legacy around business growth, shaping the brand and the work and the content, for me, the number one legacy that any leader can leave are the people that they leave. And so, not that I'm planning to go anywhere anytime soon, but like if I were, I would want to feel that I had set up an organization and a team that was so strong that, like, frankly, I could walk out the door and they would still be able to do fantastic work and build an amazing brand even without me at the helm. I mean, that's really what that legacy is. And then I would love a legacy where they say that I was, fair and made this place a place that they wanted to be, not just because it's a job, but it's because it's an organization that they feel proud to be a part of. And so that's something that's become increasingly more important to me. I feel like the older I get, maybe I'm getting like more sentimental about the whole thing, but like I do feel that those are the things that I'm going to be the most proud of anytime I leave an organization. I think that I've forgotten the first question now. After opining
It
about the
was
second
kind
question.
of in terms of your leadership
Oh,
approach.
right,
So
right.
leadership approach, leadership
Yeah.
philosophies. I think they're kind of tied in with the first question that you
Yeah,
answered. But
I
yeah,
think so. I mean, I think that any leader really needs to understand what they're stepping into. So it's less about me having sort of a one size fits all approach to leadership. It's really more, what does the organization need? What does the brand need? What does this team need at this time? And that'll look very different depending on the role, the context of the role. So, like as an example, being a leader at a larger scaled organization, like when I was at Bath and Body Works, is going to look different than how I can best add value as a leader within a smaller, nimbler, leaner, and private organization like EOS that's just in
yep,
a very different phase in its journey. And so for me, it's really about assessing, what does this team need? What does the company need? What does this brand need? And how can I add the most amount of value as a critical member of the leadership team? Within Bath and Body Works, it's just my day to day looked very different. The team itself looked very different, and so how I really felt like I could add the most value looked very different than where I am today. There was a lot more, for example, representing the team's ideas within different leadership forums, right? Within EOS, we're lean. We're a relatively small team, and so I'm in it with the rest of the team. And the way that I add a lot of value is like really being more, a member of the team, and actually kind of like rolling up my sleeves and doing some of
yeah,
the work too. And that's a really important thing within a smaller organization of how leaders show up, is that they're part of the team, not only in some sort of like a hierarchical structure. So that's really been for me, the last two, this experience as well as my last experience has been, it's been a really great juxtaposition for me to be able to flex my own leadership style and to be able to adjust as I need in order to help to make the team as successful as they possibly can be.
yeah, that makes sense. What is the actual size difference? Like, how many employees are there at Bath and Body Works versus EOS? I don't know off the top
Well,
of
I
my head.
mean, Bath and Body Works also has like the entire field organization, so it's like tens
Yeah,
of
yeah,
thousands of people. I genuinely can't even remember how many people were within the home office, but I think that even it's probably in the hundreds that I
yep,
worked with more on a day to day basis. EOS is over 100 people, but that's it.
yep,
We're a really small, nimble team, which is also part, I think, of how I think about our competitive advantage. So at any
yep,
point, whatever situation you're in, whatever role you're in, you always have to think about, like, not what do I not have, like what am I missing that I wish I had. You think about, what do I have, and then how do I leverage that to competitive advantage. For EOS, if my competitive advantage is that we're smaller, less red tape, make decisions faster, can do, can be scrappier, I can create things like, our Cooch Blessings campaign and react really
yeah,
quickly to that. Or I can create things like, we do, one of the first things that I did was initiate like our D2C micro batch strategy, which allowed for us to create small batches of limited edition, get it while you can, you're never going to see these again type of product, in order to drive a engagement with our fan base. And that's been hugely
yep.
successful for us too. But these are the types of things that we could enact because we were leaner and smaller and could move fast.
Yeah, I mean the having product in the influencer's hand. What was the influencer's name, by the way?
Carly Joy.
Carly Joy. Okay, so having product in her hands within 3 days is with like custom packaging, custom labeling, whatever it is just crazy. Like it's so cool. And like you said, if even if Bath and Body Works tried to do that, it'd be really hard, right? And just so much more tape, paper, whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and also even just the approval process would have been,
Yeah.
in this case, I'm telling you the truth, and I've used this as like a funny, like a funny factoid, but it's actually true, which is I forgot to tell my boss that I was doing this, but I had already initiated the whole thing. So there's like no turning back. I forgot to tell my CEO that I had initiated creating Cooch Blessing Cream product. And but it was like the ship had sailed. So luckily he saw the tremendous value in the initiative as well and was like fully on board. But
Luckily,
yeah,
it
I think
worked.
it's a good thing it worked. Yes, exactly.
Well, let's talk about something else that worked too. So you have crushed it on TikTok, and I think that you described it earlier, but like it is my personal favorite social network. Like I just love it. I don't know if all my data is going to the CCP in China. I don't really care, whatever, right? But I love it, and I just think there's so much creativity, and and it kind of has that emotion of joy, right? Like it's so talk to me about that evolution there, right? You guys started working on it, I believe, a couple years ago, right? 2, 3 years ago. So what prompted you to invest in it in the first place, and then how has your approach changed over time, right? I think that you've talked about authenticity, but talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, so I mean, we jumped on board pretty early on. We had our first campaign on TikTok in the fall of 2019, which I know it was only 2 years ago, but it seems like a lifetime
Yep.
ago. And it was a lifetime ago, and I would say in like sort of the maturity of the brands jumping on to TikTok as a marketing platform. For us, we had our first campaign largely because we were all personally obsessed. I mean, we had all been sort of on the app since 2018, myself included. And I do feel that for marketers who are considering new platforms, it's really important to sort of immerse yourself in that new platform. Maybe this is another lesson from my old like retail days, but we used to be out in stores all the time, and there's nothing that really substitutes. No amount of somebody explaining something to you can substitute the experience of just doing it yourself. And
Yeah.
so, for us, we were all on TikTok. We kind of loved it even back then when it was predominantly like lip syncing, mostly. And so we decided that we wanted to be able to take our standing experimental test and learn media budget component and test TikTok. And the results were unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
We obviously like measured the results in terms of like brand lift and ad recall and all of these things, and we just saw numbers that we had never seen before in any other type of paid media campaign. And so we jumped right back in. I think we went. I think we ran our first campaign in September. The second campaign was in like December. So like as soon as we could just like reactivate, we reactivated, and then that December campaign we were the first brand that partnered with Charlie D'Amelio. And so that campaign went like crazy as well, because at that time she was like completely taking off like a rocket ship. And then
Yeah.
we kind of went back in again. So it's become a real staple component of our marketing plan. And it has evolved over time. The way that we think about our engagement on it, I would say that we, in the beginning, weren't as savvy in terms of how to build out our owned and organic presence. And now we, I think, have really some best in class ways of approaching that so that we can build our own like audience of fans on the platform. And then in addition, we often, we have episodic like creator activations where we get to
Yep.
then reach new audiences and tap into other people's like incredible creativity. And then,
Yep.
of course, we have a just always investing in paid media on the platform, whether it's through the creator content or our owned content. So I would say that our strategy in the beginning was really like, let's just we love it. Let's just
Yep.
see how it goes. Now I think we have a much more sophisticated strategy in play, where it's a multi-component strategy that we really activate again. I would say 365 days a year. And over that, I think there are a few things that we've learned. I think we've learned that the platform itself has evolved, so the content on it has evolved. But the one thing that I would say that was true back then, that is true today, is that highly entertaining, like not perfect, not polished content tends to be the most effective and tends to get the highest amount of engagement. And I actually think that that's affecting and influencing content outside of the platform as well. Increasingly, I feel that that's the type of content that's really resonating in other social media platforms, or in other areas of production. And so that is something that where I feel there's been an overarching trend that TikTok has truly influenced. We've found that like working with different creators is continues to be an important part of our platform strategy, where we really need to reach a lot of different audiences, and having that diversified approach across many different creators gives us sort of what I call it, like you got to kind of take a lot of at bats
Yeah.
to strike to be successful, not strike out. I'm gonna mix my sports metaphors, and then you're gonna see how completely unqualified I am to use that metaphor. But to hit a home run, that's what I was gonna say. But yeah, so I mean, you really do. You have to try a lot in order to actually find the things that win. And then we've also found that owned and organic is just as important as paid. That having a really smart strategy around owned and organic allows for us to have our own voice on the platform. It also allows for us to be more relevant. Not that like the weird brand that advertises occasionally, but like the brand that's like a member of the community.
Yep.
And so that's been a really important thing that we've worked really hard over the course of the last 2 years to refine what's our voice and what's our point of view. Our content tends to be funny and authentic, and we don't take ourselves too seriously. And I think as brands have increasingly embraced not taking yourself too seriously and being more authentic and funny and a little raw, I
Yeah.
think that they're going to find a higher degree of success on the platform, because that's really what the community wants.
Yeah. I think the reality is that we're so drowned in content, right? There's just
Yeah.
so many content options available that, having something that's unexpected, having something that is, I think that's appealing to people right now, in
Absolutely.
particular. And I have like 6 questions coming out of that, and I'm trying to decide which one to go with. So you kind of talked a little bit about kind of team, right? And team specifically around like being embedded in the platform was helpful for you. And I know that ColourPop does the same thing where they actually have, they have platform specialists. So like you're the Facebook person, you're the Instagram person, you're the TikTok person, and you run both the owned and the kind of organic influencer relationships there. So talk to me about how you structure your team. You mentioned agencies a little bit as well. I'd love to hear about what role they play. So talk to me a little bit about team structure, agencies. How are you, setting up resources there?
Well, I mean, I wish I could tell you that we had this massive team that we deploy, everyone dedicated to different platforms and different components of our marketing strategy. But the reality is that we're a relatively small and lean team, so we all wear a lot of
Yep.
hats.
Yep.
But in some ways, I actually do believe that, like I said earlier, turning something that, you could view as glass half empty into a glass half full, therefore becoming a competitive advantage, is that we actually have a really strong, I would say, multi-platform point of view across many team members within the marketing team, because they're all sort of like, they've all become experts across platforms, which has been really great for cross pollination, as well as looking for trends and things that are coming out like from one platform that's influencing another. So like, when we look at, for example, what's working and trending on TikTok, and we compare that to what's working for us on Instagram, like it's actually really helpful to have that level of cross pollination and look for the sparks that might be shared and look for the points of difference as well. We do have, folks who on our team who do all of the content creation for owned and organic. So we do predominantly all the content creation. We work with creators from time to time as well, as I mentioned, as
Yep.
sort of an episodic kind of strategy. And really, our creative agencies are there to help fuel big, thorny creative questions and really help to juice us with things that we couldn't have possibly imagined as the experts on big creative ideas. Mostly for our paid media that we might deploy, a little less so for things like, they don't do, for example, any of our like owned and organic TikTok content. But
Yep.
in the case of like, the shave cream viral video, we wanted a super duper smart, super fast response to something that was happening in real time. So that's
Yep.
when we like reached out and engaged our agency to kind of help supercharge our creative efforts. And man, did they come through. So I do really think that, we've gotten to a place where we have a really great machine that's operating. It's not necessarily I would say a specialized machine, but more of a generalist approach across all of our social media platforms so that we can make sure that we have at any given time, we're all kind of learning together.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sounds complicated, but it makes sense.
I feel like I'm making it sound more complicated than it really is, but at the end of the day, I truly, I do believe that like when you're part of a smaller team, you really believe that like great ideas can come from anywhere.
Yeah.
And so we love this idea of sort of tapping into this collective hive, um, both internal as well as like some of our really important external partners as well. But it's like it's one brain trust, and may the best idea win. Sometimes it's mine, but sometimes it's the interns, and it's like it's a good idea is a good idea. So we're willing to lean in wherever the good ideas come from.
Totally. And actually what I meant by complicated was not it's not like it's more just I think when all you did was run like TV and magazine ads, like it wasn't that complicated, right? And so
Yes,
there's just there's
yes.
just such an unlimited number of options that you can do now that
Oh man,
it's crazy.
it really is, and this is why I truly believe for myself, I will always be a marketer at heart because I find it so exciting and so invigorating. Because like one of the
Yeah.
core things about my personality is like I just love to learn, and as soon as I stop learning, I feel like I'm gonna like die of boredom. And and marketing, there's always something to learn in marketing because it's always evolving. I mean, could not have imagined like when I first took this job at EOS that someday I would become someone who, gets quoted on TikTok strategy, but like because it didn't
Yeah.
exist at the time. And so everybody is a newbie and everybody can be an expert. And that's actually one of the things that's fantastic about our industry.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's I get requests all the time, like, okay, I need a VP of marketing that's got 10 years of digital, this amount of social, this amount of this. I'm like, guys, like this stuff hasn't been around for that long. Like they're just
Right.
like, it's like there's nobody that has this experience that you're looking for. But okay, one more question, and then we'll go into just a fun kind of end of show question. So, it wouldn't be complete if we didn't talk about creators a little bit more. And obviously, you talked about your work with Charlie early on, and some of the stuff that you do now. But walk me through what your philosophies are specifically on influencer marketing. So, how do you approach that, or creator marketing, whatever you want to call it? As well as what structurally do you do, right? Do you have like a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 strategy? Are you doing gifting? Are you doing like what are the actual structural components as well as the philosophies in terms of how you work with creators?
Yeah, so I actually do believe in diversified like sort of slates of creators where we have for any given campaign we like to kind of go after some folks with like maybe larger like much larger size audiences like a Charlie, or recently we did something with Bella Porch, we did something with Ricky Thompson on Instagram. Like so we'll work with some of like the bigger creators, but then also having many other types of creators because they're reaching different audiences. They're really reaching different people, and then their audiences are turning to them for different reasons too. I really believe in the power of both like these macro influencers, but also micro and nano influencers having really authentic and real engagement and dialogue with their audiences as well. So I think that any smart strategy should have a multi-layered diversified approach to their creator strategy. I also really believe that there has to be some degree of balancing between the organic piece as well as really making the investment. Once you've partnered with a creator, you really want to make your investment stretch as far as possible. So ensuring that you have enough within your budget and your plan so that you can help to reach as many people as possible through amplifying that content is really an incredibly important part of partnering with creators as well. I would say that, years ago, we had been doing a lot of, gifting and things like that. I think we believe a little bit more that like we're in a place right now, I think as an industry where when people work hard to get their audience, whether it's a small audience or a large audience, you're really expected to compensate people for that. And
Yeah.
obviously somebody with a significantly smaller audience they're not necessarily going to command as large, compensation as somebody who has like a much significantly larger, but everybody deserves to get paid for the value that they're driving on behalf of your brand. And so that is something that we do believe in, and we ensure is like baked into any program that we're running. Other than that, I think there's some degree of like, especially on TikTok, I would say there's some degree of letting the creators do what they do best, which is create, because
Yep.
they really
Yep.
know how to create great content in a way that you as the brand, while you're trying to like brief them on like, do this and don't do that. And like all of the different ways that we brief, which is probably super annoying to creators, but like you do have to let go to some degree and make sure that you are like you're partnering with this person. You're paying them for their expertise. Let them use their expertise. And that has been a really important part of our learning, in particular on TikTok, because like with TikTok, it's like completely like, was like unpredictable what would go,
Yeah.
what would do well and what wouldn't do well. And so what we found was like our success on average was increasing the more we sort of like let go of like the tightness in the brief and the tightness of how we wanted to control the content. So, overarching, I think creators are such an important part of any brand's ecosystem. And in particular, when you're a brand that really has a strong, like social media following, when you're really trying to tell, many and often stories to your communities, it's important to keep that community like thriving and keep them engaged through not only your own produced content, but working with creators to create like new ways of creating content, as well as new ways of reaching incremental audiences.
Yeah, letting go is super hard. I think it's something that, obviously I think I've grown up in this era, right? But I think that, historically that controled messaging was super important, right? And super just people spend a lot of time on it. And now it's like you're not who you say you are, right? You're who everybody else says you are, because everybody else has a voice now.
That's right.
Okay, so let's get to a fun end of show question. So, so I find TikTok, particularly a person's individual stream, to be incredibly revealing about what they find interesting, right? So it's actually like if you sit there and I let somebody else watch my TikTok stream, like, wow, they are like finding out like who I am as a person, right? Like they're understanding deeply what I'm interested in. And for you, I know that learning is really important, which is also one of the best parts about TikTok, right? You learn about all these random things. So if I were to look through your TikTok stream, what would be some of the things that I would find that I wouldn't expect, right? Are you one of the cooking people? Somehow I don't even have a dog, but apparently I love dog videos because they show up all the time, only because I watch them all the way through every time. So what's on yours that I wouldn't expect to find?
But first of all, that's like an amazing question, because I feel like this should be like, I don't know, like maybe this should be part of like a personality litmus test or something.
For sure.
It's like,
it's so revealing.
Yeah,
it's
like forget
such a
Myers
look.
Briggs, right?
Yeah.
Like you just need to like look at somebody's TikTok for you, and then you'll figure out exactly everything that you need to know about them. Okay, so apparently TikTok thinks that I like incredibly juvenile humor. Like, I mean, beyond juvenile humor. And I don't know. I mean, I like to say that some of it's driven by research for my job. But I'm pretty sure I'm also doing my own like, off the clock like scrolling of like ridiculous. I like to laugh a lot when I'm on TikTok. So I find like ridiculous physical humor, or like punny humor, or like people who are doing lots of like skits. I get a lot of like comedy skits and things like that. I don't get as many pets. I do get, and this one I do think is.
So you don't like animals then? You're not.
Apparently, oh my God, this is like I know of everything in this podcast. Like that's gonna be the thing that like goes viral.
You're gonna show up on PETA's Instagram.
Totally, it's gonna be like Soyoung Kang hates animals. No, you know what I do? Like if animals, if there was a Venn diagram between animals and comedy, I do get some of those. Like when
Yes,
there's like
yes, yes.
funny, like the funny like animals that like do like weird things that people happen to capture on camera. I get those.
Yep, yep.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I think I get a lot of, I would say, on a real note, I get a lot of things that are, like related to like social justice. I get a lot of
Hmm.
people
Hmm.
talking about like, I get a lot of creators, influencers, the community like of color, whether it's like actually Asian, Black, Hispanic. I get a lot of different groups, like very
Yeah.
diverse feed, and talking about like real things. And I love it because I feel like it helps me to like expand my mind and my understanding of like how different people are thinking about different topics. So I get a lot of that. I get a lot of Lizzo, but I think everybody gets a lot of Lizzo.
I don't. I mean, like, I feel like I want to get Lizzo, but I don't get her. So I
I get
don't
a
know.
ton of Lizzo and Jason Derulo. So I don't
That's what I'm
know.
saying. Is I think every person's like my wife and I will sit in bed and we'll be looking at TikTok and I like look over at hers for a while. I'm like, man, yours sucks. Like, and I'll try to show her mine. She's like, this is so boring. It's like pretty fascinating how good they are. Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you taking out the time. I know I learned a lot today. I'm sure everybody that listens will learn a lot as well. And congrats again on all your success, both at EOS and in the past. And excited to see where you go in the future. You're going to kill it. I know.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. This was like actually one of the most fun conversations I've had. I laughed a lot. So
I
thank you
mean,
for that.
that's kind of the goal, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not really a fisherman. Like, I don't really, for some reason, you won't know this, but like, I wear a different Hawaiian shirt to every single episode because I wore one once and my wife was like, well, now you have to keep going. So I've got a closet full of 50 Hawaiian shirts. The point is for it to be fun. Because then, people listening to it will have fun. So, but thanks so much. This was awesome.
Thank you, Connor.
All right. Talk soon.
Bye.
Hit subscribe now. Earned by Tribe Dynamics. Tribe Dynamics unlocks your social media influencer community. Our platform not only tracks and measures your best influencer relationships, but discovers new influencers to grow your business through earned media. Get started with a demo today at tribedynamics.com. tribedynamics.com.